Welcome to Scaling Smart, the Quickly Hire podcast, where we explore how founders are building exceptional teams and scaling their businesses. I'm your host, Brad Morrison. In each episode, we dive into the journeys, challenges, and strategic decisions that shape growing companies. These conversations will give you practical insights on when and how to leverage fractional talent to accelerate your growth. Hey everyone, I am joined today by Brinard Sweeting of Visionary Pro Digital. Brinard, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Brad, for having me on. Excited to be here, man.
Tell us a little about Visionary Pro Digital.
So this is an agency that I started. We're a website design, and now we're a software development agency as well, based here in Freeport, Grand Bahama in the Bahamas. And we've been in operation as of June 8th. We've been in operation for 8 years. And
Congrats.
Thank you. It started off a little interesting how it all came together. But I used to work for another agency prior to that, and things weren't looking the best there in terms of just some changes that were happening. And so I made the decision to start to pursue entrepreneurship. And one of the things I started off doing early on was just reaching out, just kind of brushing up my own portfolio, reaching out to potential clients, and just managing to kind of build that base before taking that springboard. And so led to some interesting conversations with my boss at the time, who wasn't a fan of it. And so some people ask how you get into entrepreneurship. I like to say that I was pushed into entrepreneurship after that. And so we managed to enjoy a lot of success over the years. And so we worked with a lot of SMEs. We do a lot of work with government these days. And so, yeah, I think that's a lot of how we kind of came to be. And so more recently, we've really expanded into a lot of software development, because beforehand we were doing website design, a lot of WordPress-based sites, some custom coded ones. Project management became a very heavy focus, because I think a lot of our clients who came to do work with us started to want to expand into other platforms and get more things built. And sometimes they would have had their own teams doing things. And so, but the challenge or the unique glue, I think, was that they didn't have me in it. And so that's where the project management part of it really kind of came in. And so that was a skill I've always been good at, right? I've been very keen to collect all the parts and pieces, organize them, and I get people to their goals. It just so happened that it's in the space of design and development. And so that was a very strong point where we were able to establish a number of retainers in the business for that, which was very important to help us distinguish. I think you see a number of certainly providers or agencies may pop up here and there. I think what they don't understand is that recurring revenue, that where you get that from is not just sort of your website care plans and your website maintenance plans, but it's how you consistently deliver results and value to your clients through retainers. And so a retainer for law firms looks one way, and a retainer for us looks one way. And that's how we've been able to sustain on top of other projects and really get to scalability to where we're at today. And so, yeah, it's been an interesting journey, certainly for the last 8 years. I definitely can say I'm not the same person that I was when I started out all that time ago. And so we've seen a lot of shifts in the industry. I think there's some exciting things. There's also some concerning things, specifically talking about AI. I'm sure we can be able to get into that at some point.
Yes.
But yeah, that definitely is a starting point, I guess, I think.
So when you were working with it was an agency, and what type of work did they do? What was their client base, and web and creative projects as well?
They were a full service marketing agency. So they did commercials, they did graphic design, et cetera, copywriting, et cetera, and then also website design. So I was the only website designer there. And so, when we weren't supposed to do outside work, but I was doing outside work like everybody else was doing. I was just following suit, but I was the only person who got caught. That was part of it. So that's sort of what they were doing. They're no longer in operation. They haven't been in operation for several years, but that was definitely a good springboard for us with that.
And so as you're doing work outside, was that mostly digital work that you were doing, or was it a combination?
Yeah, a lot of the work that I was doing on the side would have just been the same thing, website projects. But the difference is that where the agency at the time, they would have charged a significant margin, we saw the opportunity, or I saw the opportunity because it was only me at that time. I saw the opportunity to be able to serve smaller clients who might not have had those supersized budgets for the agency. Right. And then that's how I added to my portfolio and was able to roll a lot of those clients into my agency one day. But I think, and I've said this to a couple of people recently, I understand now my former boss. I understand him more these days than I did back then. Sure. I understand his mentality, his framework. Some of the choices I may disagree with, but I understand it now in terms of the why. And that's because I'm now in a position of why the margins have to be what they have to be when we charge what we charge, why we have to be a certain way with the team, etc. I get it now. And it's interesting that if we ever have a conversation again at some point, he lives in a different country now, but I'm pretty sure that coffee conversation would be interesting to see that. And I always, Brad, it's interesting how life comes full circle.
Yes.
And you're able to really compare in one season. You're like, I can do way better than this, and this person's doing that wrong. And then now you get into your season and you're like, I understand.
Yes. Yeah, I've been there. I think almost everyone, especially entrepreneurs, see that, right? That when we're younger, we have a certain mindset and maybe even different goals and how we see the world, but life is a journey. It is a maturing process in a lot of ways, and it does come for full circle. You do learn and grow as the years go by, and then you can kind of understand someone's perspective a little better. So I appreciate that. Tell me a little about your customer base now. You mentioned starting with web and then doing software development projects. So I would imagine your customer base has changed a little bit from when you were working independently with some of the smaller businesses.
Yeah, and we still do work with a lot of smaller businesses. So those would be those who are coming in for those sort of basic and sometimes not so basic WordPress-based sites. They start off basic, and then you have what is called scope creep. We have certain templates and processes in place to avoid that. When I first started off the agency, I entered into what was known at the time as WP Elevation. It's now known as Agency Mavericks.
Run by Troy Dane, great guy, and has been incredibly
Troy's
helpful.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
he taught me so much. His program taught me so much. I attribute a lot of my success to his framework, and that's what's kind of allowed us to kind of stand out. And so, customer base wise, we still serve the smaller customers, but we work a lot with the city's government on a regular basis, and so they have more needs than just the sites that we manage for them and we build for them in the network. It's now we need this enterprise-based solution. We need this other enterprise-based solution. And so it's really stretched us to the point now where there was other vendors involved, and sometimes it's not where they wanted it to be. And so I made the decision probably about a year and a half ago to say, why don't we do this? Have the relationship. They're asking us to manage the projects anyway. Let's now take the business up a notch, and let's now be the ones that fill that gap for them, because we know that we have the ability to do it. I always had the power to be able to bring the right people together and get it done. Now, do I know how to build custom software from scratch at the level myself? No, but I know how to connect with teams who do, and I know how to engage and bring those relationships together. And so that's where we've seen a lot of success with them. And so we still have the smaller WordPress-based sites, but we also now have a lot of solutions that we're building actively. And these are like long-term based plans. Some of these are taking 3, some of them are taking 6, 12-month builds, but these are things that are definitely going to help transform the city's government and obviously the public, the wider public, Bahamian public, in a better way. And so it's just exciting to be a part of these projects. And it's really stretched me in that. And I think it's in that vein why it was time to really start to scale up the team. For a long time, we had operated rather lean, I'd say. Profitable, but rather lean in terms of team size. We'd outsourced this. get that done, have everybody kind of systematized in a way. But it came a point now where I was like, look, even with a new passion project I started to work on, I'm not going to be able to always be here to go ahead and see these things through. And I realized I was at a critical junction, because if I take it a little bit back, we have a system that we manage all our clients with. And I remember this was at one point in time, I think it was early 2023. And I was like doing this and doing that and had to travel here and handling so many different things. Client requests are coming into the ticketing system. I have the time, obviously, to do it, but my patience was starting to grow thinner with doing them. And so I think I sat back in my chair one point and said, I am not doing this anymore. I just said it to myself. I remember the day, I'm not doing it. I said, I'm going to give this to somebody else. And that was key. That was definitely a key moment for me. And so that would have been my pursuit of now looking at, so where can we find this person to do this? We're not gonna try to break the bank and just kind of bring it on, but we got to do it smart, kind of scaling smartly with that. And so that's how we ended up at your doorstep and sourcing the team that we needed to do to get those things done. Because for us, I'm working right now on a movie theater project here on the island.
Building a movie theater, correct?
We're like in construction, building a movie theater and bowling alley right now.
Fantastic. That's so neat.
We haven't had a movie theater here in almost 6 years. Is following Hurricane Dorian in 2019 that devastated so many parts of the island, the country, etc. And so that kind of took the last one out in a sense. And so I kind of saw the opportunity to kind of step in there. I felt led to do it. I was passionate about it. I've always been a passionate moviegoer. That was my safe space. So when that was gone, I didn't have that safe space anymore to go and escape to. And so I certainly spent almost part of 4 or 5 years building up the plan, trial and error, failing over and over again until last year we got over $500,000 in government-backed funding to start it up. And so it's been an interesting journey, because now having to pursue that, I always knew as far back as 2022, there was going to come a point in time where I am going to get the funding for this business, but I'm also going to have to step back in the agency.
Yeah.
And more now than ever in 2025, as we're in construction and the movie theater and the bowling alley, and the agency is also growing, it's this weird dichotomy where some days I get burnt out, but now it's a good thing because we have sufficient people in place that we have most of our communication in Slack. Some days now, because I get so burnt out, I don't want to deal with agency stuff. And that's just the truth. That's just the truth. It's not that I've outgrown it by any stretch of the imagination. It's that my energy, my time, my focus needs to be in building this thing over here more than it needs to be on managing and maintaining these things. And so it's interesting to go and transition from freelancer to solopreneur to now really breaking into entrepreneurship. I think that a lot of people sometimes, and social media, whatever it might be, entrepreneurship is kind of glamorized and all that kind of stuff. But I classify it as this. You're a solopreneur when it's just you doing everything and everything rises and kind of falls on your back. You're really and truly an entrepreneur when you got to make payroll, when you got to manage people's feelings and expectations that aren't your clients, and when you have to ensure that you're building a culture internally that makes people feel like they're a part of something more. And I think that is certainly key, especially the payroll part. I think that's one of the key things that makes us stand out, because we have, Brad, a lot of people on social media now. I'm an entrepreneur, and they might sell one product, they sell a book, one SKU product on their e-commerce store. They're an entrepreneur. It's all over their Instagram, all over there. You guys need to be like me. But to be a business owner is when you can manage responsibility well, but when you can also manage people well. And I think that's the key.
Your story is fascinating, especially even going from an employee to solopreneur to entrepreneur to now times two, right? With the
Yeah.
movie theater project and doing that again. And there's skills that are transferable that you learn in building a team and team culture and meeting payroll and paying your bills and that transfer over to a second type of business that's completely unrelated to a creative agency. Let's talk a minute about your team. So as you scaled up, what was the first hire that you made outside of yourself? And here, I mean, it doesn't have to be full time, but the first that delegation, right? Being able to delegate and offload to someone else. Did you hire a developer, a support person, a salesperson? What was the first role that you hired outside of yourself?
If we look at it on a contract basis, that would have probably have been 2019, I would say. It would have been 2019. We would have been in business starting in 2017. And this was the need to now we have solid work coming in, but I'm getting the work, I'm managing the calls, but I'm also doing the design and I'm also managing the tickets. One of these things has to go. And so there are some times where I'm a great website designer. I don't like to design anymore. That's the thing about it. It's crazy. Maybe it's the same way when you're a contractor in terms of building homes and businesses and stuff. You know how to chop wood, you know how to measure, you know how to do all this stuff, but you don't want to do it. Maybe your skill is just being able to gather the parts and pieces together and lead it. That's where I realize my skill is now, or my preference, I should say. Can I still sit today and spin up a website? Fantastic. Yeah, of course. But that first hire kind of coming back in 2019 was when we first outsourced one of our website design projects, white label, to somebody else. And I realize now here's where the next growth step is going to have to happen. So now here's where I had to now start upping the prices from what we're charging clients. So no, we can't just build a site for $1,200, $2,000 anymore. It's going to cost, it's $5,000, it's $10,000. And then in 1 year, we jumped from around a 15K mark to about 50K.
Wow.
And so it was sort of making those decisions. And I think I learned this pretty early on from Chris Doe, is that the difference between kind of getting that 15K and that 50K client isn't necessarily that you're adding more bells and whistles. It's simply the quality of client that you're going after. And so that first hire was really interesting because it allowed us to see back then that, okay, there's opportunity now to do more work. And I think the importance was to do more higher quality of work as well. And we have to now factor that into the pricing. So it's not just going to be all house money play, but you're paying somebody else to do the work for you to free you up in this area so that you can be a little bit more focused. And so that was about 2019. And then kind of since then, we stopped using that person. I think it was again kind of in late 2020 going 2021, we really started to build a rapport with another smaller agency. And they would have also had a white label agreement. And so we were able to kind of go through them. And today we still maintain that relationship where we build, we bring in the work. They're all in our one system. We're all in Slack. We're all in ClickUp. And they white label built it according to our framework. They're involved in a lot of the communications, etc. And that's how, it gets done. And it makes sense for the bottom line of the business. It's kind of getting the right people in the right areas who have the right skill set to do it. And so that's where we were able to do that. That was on the website building part of it. On the ticketing part of it was when it was a young lady we went through in 2023 with you guys. And it was a great engagement with her. It was so great to finally be able to give that part of the business to somebody else other than myself. I hated dealing with tickets at that stage. I hated seeing the email come in, the client request, and then hopping on it. And so the first kind of even reach out with you guys, I was like, man, it was a control thing. So I was like, do I really want to do this though? But then you come to realize in business, delegation is going to become key, right? And relinquishing control in time released sequences is going to be key. Something I'm even learning right now with the movie theater bowling alley project, even as we're building that out, we're hiring people, and it's like we're talking about the exponential scale from what we do in the agency side and what's going to be happening on the cinema side are two different capacities. And so me sitting at the core of it is looking at a lot of the lessons that I learned in the agency side of it as it relates to outsourcing to people and bringing on team members. Hey, you're not a spaceship. You're not a one-man band. You got to know when to hand over the reins to somebody else. And I think, Brad, the key thing sometimes is not knowing when that moment is. So now I'm in a position of forcing myself to say, well, we're not open as yet, so I don't need to hand this off to so many people. But now I'm kind of even challenging myself on that. I'm like, no, now is the perfect time to do that because you need to be with the contractors more. You need to be on the site a little bit more, making sure these things are getting done. And you can't do that if you're stopping to go ahead and post on social media or you're going to engage with this investor and what. No, you got to get that off your plate. And that's something that the agency side and hiring has really taught me. And so, yeah, I think reflecting back on that initial moment where we first really brought on that sort of a part-time hire with you guys, that's really kind of helped shape how I look at delegation today.
From Quickly Hire, you've hired fractional developer, fractional project manager as well.
Yeah.
And you kind of supplement on the agency side with a white label partner that can do some of the build outs and handle that as well. But then you also, are you planning to use remote fractional talent on the movie cinema side? Or is that a physical in-person thing? It's hard to leverage that. I do see it. We have some customers that use our talent for back office work. What's your plan for staffing on the cinema side?
So our initial staffing is going to look at between 20 to 25 people. Now, what I'm thinking, and I think I had this conversation with one of your teammates the other day as well, was even as we begin to hire that full staff contingent, I was like, I like the way how you guys vet people. I wonder if there's a way that we can go ahead and also do that same thing with the cinema side. But then it also comes down to, like you said, who can we fractionally use in that, where traditionally when you have people opening these retail storefronts, like a cinema, like a bowling alley, you'll have your job fairs, you'll have your application forms online, etc. And you have used traditional roles. I'm not a traditional entrepreneur. And so I'm bringing a lot of what I know and a lot of the way that I've done things even to this business. And I see a lot of opportunity to help improve efficiency across the board, even there. So you might just be able to have something that's outsourced remotely, whereas that person doesn't need to physically be there. And I've seen those kind of roles appear on our personnel sheet as well. And it gets me to think. Like, I came across the opportunity to even do, I think, remote projection scheduling, the playlist, like those things can be done remotely because all those things are digital now. Marketing, social media management, that's something that we recently outsourced as well. But it's all of these things that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, because one of the things I know I'm keen on for sure is AI. And we had this conversation a few months ago with a firm who works with some of the bigger theater chains, where we also went to CinemaCon, and they demonstrated a lot of the results of where if you import AI into your cinema, meaning now you can track your moviegoers and their habits, and then you can target them specifically with hyper-personalized messaging, you change the game. And so I know a lot of people who would have started cinemas are a lot older than I am. I'm only 31. But I'm bringing in this sort of youthful, tech-focused approach to it because I learned that from the agency side to help improve functions and just be different. I think that's where I can see a lot of that coming in. So people who might be fractional AI specialists to help navigate those campaigns and do. I know we don't have those people here in the Bahamas en masse, but I know where we can find them. So I think that's where we can definitely see some room for that.
You're in a way a disruptor, right? I mean, you're kind of coming into an industry that is probably a bit old school, and having your technical and creative and marketing focus coming in to that, that's going to be fun to watch, Bernard. So
Right.
you're going to do some great things. AI creates efficiency, increases productivity. We're already seeing that in our own business. In your agency, how are you using AI on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, ChatGPT is my best friend. I heard it's become so many people's best friend. And so a lot of times it'll be us. SEO is a big thing because when we're building out sites, learning and programming and prompt engineering the models to be able to match the tone and the vibe and the consumer profile, i.e., the target audience for our clients we're building the site for, is something that we have to use a lot in order to make sure that whether it's just metadata or it's on-page SEO things are being optimized specifically. And so sometimes, and I guess back in the day, a lot of people kind of do that by hand, manually, etc. But once you know how to prompt engineer, you can honestly and truly get AI to go ahead and do that for you. And so I know there are a lot of tools that are AI based out there. ChatGPT, for the most part, I know it's the intro one for a lot of people, but I've spent so much time with her. We have such a great relationship. And so it's been interesting, but that's a lot of how we use AI in it right now. It's really helping to just really deal with a lot of the SEO things. And we've been looking at how to really, I'd say, deploy it a little bit more strategically throughout the organization. And again, shout out to Troy Dean, because the framework that he built all those years ago, we still follow that model today. And it didn't have AI back then, but now we found ways to where we can kind of incrementally plug in AI into that framework since then. I had a conversation with him. This might have been maybe 4 years back. Troy actually, he messaged me on, I think it was Facebook. And we had this group for all of the people who were part of the program, and you just kind of share your wins and whatnot. And so I was just very conservative sometimes with how I'd go ahead and share things because you don't want to come off as braggadocious. But there was one time where I think it was the first time we ever charged $40,000 or something like that for a project, and I kind of dropped it in there. You say, hey, this is what it was. I wouldn't be able to do that without this. And so I remember he shot me a message afterwards. He was like, bro, you're crushing it. You're
Nice.
doing a lot better than a lot of people who are here. And listen, that meant a lot. It really did.
Yeah, the agency world is notorious for the feast or famine cycle. And it's also something that a lot of people can say, hey, I'm a web developer, and they start out doing it. And that's fine. They mature over time and grow their business and learn, especially with things like that blueprint. But anyone can say there. So the quality sometimes and the pricing and actual sustainability of the business varies greatly in the agency world. And that really, more kudos to you in getting a lot of that buttoned up early on in your agency and using that, like you said, as a springboard to go into bigger projects, to grow the agency into a software development firm, but then also freeing you up to pursue the second project and other projects that you might want to take on in the future. What does your org chart look like now? Maybe on both businesses, on the agency and on the movie set of a.
On the agency side, you have myself sort of sitting at that top, which you'll see is in the coming months. I'll kind of move from the top to more like the side, and we'll start to bring our project manager a little bit more up in that role. And so they essentially at some point they are gonna spiritually replace me is my intention. And so that's where we're at right now. Then we have our project manager, and then we have our website support tech who deals with all of our client requests, etc. Then sort of underneath the project manager, you have the white label agency that we work with for website builds. And then also underneath there, you also have another software development agency who we white label work with as well. That's based out of Ukraine, who we're doing that work with. And so it's a nice, fine top down, and it kind of has a lot of child elements that kind of spring off, sub elements that spring off underneath it that will probably get cleaned up a little bit more. And so it's going to rely less on me.
With that set up from beginning to end, you don't really have to be involved in every individual project even now. Is that fair to say?
It is. I mean, like I said, there's communication that's happening right now as we speak in Slack that I don't have to go in those channels and click on. and check on it. I've also been told that I think even you guys have transitioned from Slack recently
Yes.
as well.
Yep.
And so I was looking at maybe even what ClickUp has to offer on that side as well. And so I was told that was pretty much a better option. That might help us a little bit more in sort of cleaning up some things. And so, yeah, that was a part of that as well. But I know with us on the cinema side, we have myself, we have our CFO, and then we have our director of cinema operations. What we're going to see happen after that is probably within the next 2 months, as we start to tidy up some more construction elements, we're going to see more people kind of fall in there. But they're really going to fall under our director of cinema operations. I'm still going to be at the top. My thing is really vision casting and culture building. I don't want to be too involved in the finer points of things that I say the minor points of things. I think finer and minor are different. I'd say the minor things I don't need to be involved in, but because I'm passionate about the movie going experience, I have been very keen on the finer elements of things. So how does the place feel when you first walk in there, right? How are the attitudes of the staff? How are the layout and the configuration? And are people comfortable? Do we need this kind of seat versus that kind of seat? If I lean my seat back, does it hit someone's knee? Does it allow them to pass through? So it's all of these things I've been doing. And so just organizational wise, that's me sitting at the top of it, vision casting and thinking about the person who's going to be all the way at the end, which is going to be the end user. But also for me within that whole organization chart is making sure everybody that is not me in that whole thing feels like they're a part of something bigger. So, yeah.
And so much of that is the culture that
Yeah.
you're creating. What's your approach to building a cohesive team culture?
So interestingly enough, whenever we onboard someone, even on the agency side, there's a card game that I play with them. And it's called the and Coworkers Edition. And I also just have some general icebreaker questions at various levels, beginner, intermediate, and then a little more, I don't say intimate, but a little more closer, right? And so even with those, like I said, we've hired from you guys as well. And so I know a lot of the feedback we've had from them was like, this is different. Like people tend just to just kind of hire and just kind of hear the task. You're asking questions about us and how we tick and how we feel about this and etc. And I was like, yeah, I know what it is to be on the other side of this thing. I know what it is to not feel like someone cares about you and about your life and about the things that you care about. And I think the core thing behind building culture is simply making sure that I think it's twofold. Number one is people want to make sure they're paid well. That's a fair thing to always kind of land on. And the second thing is, well, do you care about me as a person? Do I know you care about me as a person? And so I've written a culture deck, even for the cinema side of things. I'm improving on the culture deck that we have on the agency side of things as well. But it's really making sure that with anyone who works for me, hey, cares. He's not some strict tightwad who just get the work done. I don't want to hear anything, but how's your day? How's your family? I had some people before, I think they would have lost loved ones, etc. Some of them might have been in a car accident, whatever like that. And then, hey, I'm sorry, Bernard, just had this going on. I'm getting back to time. I'll be like, hey, you good? Or just let me know how's it going, man. Then following up with them, hey, how'd your test results go? Hey, how's your mom? I know you had to take her to the hospital, etc. How's she doing? Send her my love. It's things like that I think are important. And I go back to this quote by Maya Angelou. And this quote is the foundation of how I run both businesses. People forget what you did. People will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that is how I go about doing my best to build culture. Do I have it all together? Absolutely not. But I'm trying probably a lot more than other people are.
That's fantastic. That Maya Angelou quote is absolutely one of my favorites. And it is so true. It is so unbelievably true. And not enough people, I think, and not enough entrepreneurs really take that to heart. And when people have that natural need to belong and be a part of a community, and when you're working with someone and communicating with someone so many hours of every single day, it can't be a transactional relationship. It has to be more than that. So great job in incorporating that into your companies. As we kind of wrap up here a little bit, what advice would you give someone that was looking to start a business, whether it's a movie cinema, an agency, or something completely different, but someone who's looking to make that leap into entrepreneurship? What advice would you give them?
Well, I had this conversation with somebody right before we hopped on this call. But I would say, don't quit your day job, because they did. They kind of might be regretting it. Don't quit your day job until you know that you can sustain what it is that you're doing. So a lot of people look at their 9 to 5 as the shackles keeping them back from greatness. Sometimes the 9 to 5 is the thing protecting you when you're still immature, because you don't fully know what you're stepping into. Your 5 to 9 or your 5 to 12 a.m., your side hustle that you might be working towards and you're more passionate about than your 9 to 5, that's cool. But at the same time, the bill collectors come. When the landlord comes, he doesn't care about your feelings. He simply wants to know, where is my money? And so that might seem kind of straightforward, cold cut, hardcore, but I like to give it to people straight in that way. Entrepreneurship is beautiful, but entrepreneurship is incredibly difficult. And if you already been accustomed to a palette where you go and you clock in, you sit at your desk, you do some work, you go to lunch, you come back from lunch, do some more work, you leave at 4:59, and then that's it. Well, being an entrepreneurship, there you don't clock out. Some people like to say, oh, you have boundaries and do so. You don't clock out. I find myself sometimes first thing in the morning, as soon as I roll off of my bed, okay, the agency needs this. Okay, the movie theater needs this. You don't turn it off. And if you have not been given significant responsibility in your 9 to 5, you won't have the maturity and the capacity to handle what's going to come in entrepreneurship. You simply just won't. And so I always think that before you take that leap, you need to make sure that, number one, you have a plan. You have a cushion of expenses saved, whether it's 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. I think people might say, I can't do it. You better find a way to do it. I'm not making enough money to do it. You better find a way to do it, because the day is going to come, like you said, in agencies, sometimes it's feast or famine. Those days are going to come where you're doing well, but then some days the landlord's knocking and he's wondering why you're dodging his calls. And so I think that's important. So planning. And then I also think I'm a person of faith. I say, hey, look, you pray concerning what it is that you should be doing and making sure that's a part of your purpose. And then once you get a sensing that's a part of your purpose and you might be passionate about it, then you go ahead, you pursue it. And so that's kind of how I look at it. People, I know some friends of mine, etc., I sometimes might seem like a dullard when they're asking me about taking that leap, but I can only give them what I know. I'm probably one of the only successful entrepreneurs that they know personally, and I got to give it to them straight. Hey, man, this ain't what you want. Yeah. But if you want it, here's how you go about it. It's not easy, right? It's not social media clickable, but it's the truth.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything worse than having a job that you're sick of and potentially hate, the only thing worse is owning a business that you're sick of and hate. And so taking that slowly is really good advice. Well, Brinard, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation. You've shared a wealth of information helpful to our audience, and I really appreciate that. Best of luck as you continue to grow your software development company and also your movie cinema, which is fantastic. I'm a movie person, so I get it. It's a really cool venture you've got going. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much, Brinard.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Scaling Smart. If you're building a team and want to leverage fractional talent to accelerate your growth, visit quicklyhire.com to find pre-vetted professionals who can help you scale. Don't forget to subscribe for more founder insights on smart team building.